Hey everyone. So, something I love is to debate different topics. And I recently came across this list of the most published Marvel characters. And I thought it'd be fun to start going through this list one by one and talking about whether or not I think each of these characters are underrated or overrated. And if you're watching, before I reveal my answer, I want each of you to share your answer. I see Darth Lopez is here. Appreciate you being here and whoever else joins as we go. And I'm going to go one by one. And if I think they're underrated, they get the bell. If I think they're overrated, they get the buzzer. And I have one rule that I have to pick. I can't just be like, oh, this character is just kind of okay. But I have to pick overrated or underrated. So starting at number one, probably no surprise, the most published Marvel character is Spider-Man. Now, is Spider-Man overrated or underrated? And as soon as I say the name, if you're in the chat and you want to comment, go ahead and put that on before I say. And as I reveal my answer, again, if you disagree, all right, we've got Darth Lopez who says he's overrated. And my vote is going to be, as much as it hurts me, I agree. Spider-Man is overrated. And it's painful because Spider-Man used to be my very favorite character, but got a couple of things going against him. First of all, he's at number one. And when you're at the top, there's really only one way you can go, and that's going down. But something that really, and again, I love Spider-Man. He's still like a top 10 probably for me. But something that just really annoys me about Spider-Man is he's just kind of a klutz. And it really bothers me that this guy who is a genius has trouble paying his bills. You know, you've got Iron Man who's a genius and Mr. Fantastic, but Spider-Man's life is just chaotic. And it really annoys me for some reason. I know that's supposed to be part of why he's endearing. You know, he's supposed to be kind of like one of us. And of course, like he's trying to balance his work and his life at the same time. But I don't see other characters struggling with that work-life balance nearly as much as Spider-Man. And so it just gets on my nerves when he's late for something yet again, when Tony Stark doesn't have that problem, or Mr. Fantastic doesn't have that problem. And I know part of it has to deal with Spider-Man having a secret identity, but Iron Man used to have a secret identity, and he wasn't showing up late to things. And as the head of Stark Industries, he certainly had a lot more responsibility than Peter did as Spider-Man. And in fact, my actual favorite Peter Parker, at least in recent years, is when he was the head of Parker Industries, and he showed a little more responsibility at that time. But Peter just needs to grow up just a little bit. But for that reason, I'm going to say that he's overrated. All right. Number two, we have Wolverine. So, is Wolverine overrated or is he underrated? What do you think? Well, I don't want to just, it's hard again when you're at these top to say that anybody is underrated, but to at least keep it interesting. Oh, I'm going to agree with Darth Lopez again. He's got underrated. I agree, Darth. Wolverine is underrated because he should be number one. Because, well, first of all, something I meant to say that I like about Spider-Man is, of course, he is willing to sacrifice himself for anyone. He really cares, puts other people first. But I think Wolverine does that too. He still has that same self-sacrificial attitude, but without all that klutzy baggage. Wolverine's cool. Spider-Man's just kind of dorky, chaotic. Wolverine's cool. He's got an edge. And so I really love him for that. While at the same time, he also really cares for people. And of course, I've shared this in other videos. What I really love about characters when they appear to be a real tough guy, but deep down, they're just a softie. And that's certainly Wolverine. Plus, I love that his healing power, you can just be a lot more creative with it as writers. There's just some really interesting directions you can go. And Spider-Man doesn't have that as much. He's just basically like, okay, he's strong. There's only so many ways that you can use strength. And he can climb walls. You can't get too creative. But Wolverine has a lot of ways that you can be creative. All right, and if anybody has comments, obviously you can say why you think, Darth, you can say why you think he's underrated or overrated in the comments. Feel free, and yeah, as people share things, I'll share my thoughts or counter thoughts or whatever, or just keep letting me speak and just say underrated, underrated. All right, the number 3 most published Marvel character is Captain America. Is Captain America overrated, or is Captain America underrated? All right, well, you see my hoodie, and so you probably think, oh, this is a big Captain America fan, that he's underrated. I see Darth says that he's underrated, but I'm going to go a little bit different, and I'm going to go overrated. And here's where I have to make a distinction between the movie Cap and the comic Cap. For some of these characters, I feel they're obviously similar, but they're different as well, whether you're talking about the movie or TV version. So I am going to say the comic version in the last at least decade or two is overrated. And again, I'm a huge Cap fan. For my 30th birthday, my wife threw me a surprise costume party and a superhero party. And she had made me a Captain America costume ahead of time so that when I got to the party, I'd be able to change into it. So I'm a huge Captain America fan. But something I love about Captain America, or what I think Captain America should be, is just a real sense of more traditional morality than any other character. Because he's from, obviously was an adult in the 40s. And that's what really sets him apart. Even though he's obviously been in modern times for decades now, he's still, to me, supposed to be this guy from a long, long time ago and have more values like there was then. And of course, he shows some of those values, but the one that really irks me, and this is probably maybe my hottest take of any of these characters, is that I wish Captain America was either married or celibate. I just like something about a character that just is very traditional in that sexual morality. And I don't need that for every character, but I wish Cap's supposed to be, as close as you can get to Jesus in comic books, I think. And so it's really kind of, bothered me in the last, again, couple of decades where Cap's just had multiple girlfriends that he's, slept around with and all that. Again, for some characters, doesn't bother me. Hawkeye, he's supposed to be kind of a player. Tony Stark, certainly a player. But Cap, come on, man, what are you doing? You're supposed to be better than all of us. And when he does that, when he's like a regular person, because that's kind of what it is, right? He's supposed to identify with, but the more Cap is just like a regular person, the more he is in Captain America to me. And so for that reason, I think Captain America is overrated. All right, coming in at number 4, we have Cyclops. So is Cyclops overrated or is he underrated? And some of these are tough. I haven't really thought about these ahead of time. I'm reading through this list, and so this is all off the top of my head. And obviously, I made the point that I'm not going to allow myself to to say they're just right. I have to pick one or the other. So Darth says overrated. Man, this is a character that I have gone back and forth on all my life. When I was a little kid, I thought he's underrated. And then for a long period of time, I thought he's overrated. But now I'm back on the underrated bandwagon. I say Cyclops is underrated. And the reason I think this is because, first of all, he's been the main leader of the X-Men. How awesome is that, right? And he's been able to take the X-Men through some crazy times. And I think why I have often thought that he was overrated is because obviously his biggest comparison is to Wolverine. And compared to Wolverine, he's just a square, right? Yeah, that's a word Darth likes. Just a square, just a straight, guy, and plays things straight up, and can be kind of boring for that reason. But I have come around to say, hey, this guy, if you want someone to be your leader in battle, if you want someone to take you into war, then I think Cyclops is your guy. I think he's got a lot of strategy, obviously, and certainly it puts people first over him, the team over him. And so for that reason, I'm going to say Cyclops is underrated. All right. Number 5. The number 5 most published character in Marvel Comics is, and Darth agrees with me there. Even though Darth says that he's overrated, he does say that he's a great leader 100%. Oh, and Spec Collector. Thanks for being here, Spec Collector. Oh, man. He has a strong opinion. Says that he's way overrated. Worst leader in all super teams. I'm trying to bring your comment up. I got to figure out, this is my first live, so I'll have to figure that out later. I thought I just had to click on it. But Spec Collector says way overrated, worst leader in all super teams. Thanks for sharing your opinion, Spec Collector. Darth Lopez, hot take. Wow, his mind is blown. Mine too. This is what I love. This is what, I watch sports shows like First Take, Part of the Interruption, all those kinds of things. I love these different takes. So appreciate you guys sharing your opinions and your hot takes as well. Spec Collector, Batman, Captain America, Reed Richards, even Nightwing is better. Woo, man. This guy hates Cyclops more than anyone. I used to be there. I've come around. It's changed my mind. Shooting Stuff says overrated. Thanks for being here. Shooting Stuff also agrees that Cyclops is overrated. So I'm the only person that thinks he's underrated. Don't quite. I don't know if anybody hates him as much as Spec Collector does, but I'm in the minority. And it's funny because I would have been with you guys 5 to 10 years ago, but I don't know. Maybe I hated him so. Maybe I've hated him so much in the past that I've swung on the other pendulum. Kenneth Bird says, hi to everyone. Hi, Kenneth. We're just talking about the most published characters in Marvel history and whether or not they're underrated or overrated. Spec Collector says, guy got X-Men canceled and Wolverine brought them back. I can't disagree with you there. Wolverine obviously is, again, he's my number 1 of all time. Love Wolverine. And obviously they have a contrast between them. Spec Collector, weak and a simp. I can't fully disagree, but in his defense, he is the one who ultimately pulled Jean Grey. He is the one who pulled Emma Frost, and Wolvie. He got Jean when it comes to Jean Grey. Cyclops is the one that got her, not Wolvie. Darth says, holy moly, the Rosenberg Cyclops changed the way I view Cyclops. I've got to see I'm not sure what all that means or which one the Rosenberg Cyclops is. Maybe I've read the story, but I'll have to check that out, exactly what that means. All right, so going to number 5, I think I said it already, but at number 5, we have Iron Man. So is Iron Man overrated or is he underrated? What do you think? Put it in the chat. I'll give my answer in just a second. And we're talking about the comic version, not the movie version, because again, they're all a little bit, different from each other. So we have Darth saying overrated. Oh man, this one really is a tough one for me. Oh my goodness. I'm going to say overrated. We're gonna put Iron Man overrated. And I hate to say that because I have become a fan of him. I used to hate that character. Spec Collector says underrated. This is one where it depends what day you ask me. But when I think of Iron Man, it all comes down, as I'm thinking off the top of my head, a character we'll get to at some point who's way too low on this list for me is Doom. So Iron Man, yeah, this is going to hurt a lot of characters in my eyes. Yeah, he's not really much different than Doom. They just both have this power suit. They're both intelligent, and Doom just has more going for him. And you know, and also with Tony Stark, he's obviously impulsive, and so he's made some mistakes that people shouldn't make. He's lost his company, I think, multiple times. So even though Iron Man's awesome, yeah, I've got to pick one. So I'm going to say overrated. Spectator, good point. He's beaten the Hulk 3 times that I can think of. Anyone who can beat the Hulk obviously deserves tons of respect. Darth Lopez, take away the armor. He's just a man genius, but just a dude. And Spectator agrees to that. That's true. And that's where I go. That's where I have him overrated, because he's just, you know, a man with armor, and Doom is that, but Doom has so much more going for him. So maybe that's an unfair comparison, but that's where it's got me. Yeah, Iron Man's biggest victory is against alcoholism, that I do respect 100%. Great point. Agree that that yeah, deserves all the props for that. And of course, his continued, once you're an alcoholic, you always fight against that disease. And so his success against that is certainly inspirational. All right. Well, that brings us to number 6. Number 6, the first lady on the list. And we have Storm. She's the 6th most published character in Marvel Comics. Is Storm overrated, or is she underrated? All right, so got some votes. We got Spec Collector, Darth Lopez, both say that she is underrated, and I agree. She is underrated. I'm actually surprised she is the 6th most published character, but she is awesome. Her powers are off the charts, and I think there's even more creative ways that they could explore using them than they have. But she's awesome. She obviously has this background as a pickpocket, so she's really street smart. Street smarts really go a long way for me in respecting the character, and so I really like her ingenuity. You know, since she has a little bit of that bad girl past, she can do what's needed. You know, sometimes as a superhero, you have to cross some boundaries, and I feel like she's willing to do that when it's needed, and or some other characters. And of course, that's what makes the characters good. You know, Spider-Man never bends the rules. Storm, I think, maybe a little bit more willing to do that, while still obviously being a woman of character. I also, Darth Lopez says she's a goddess, right, with the hard eyes, and so. I really like character. One of the things, and I try not to get too much cultural commentary on my channel, because I know that can be divisive, but this is a debate. Something I really appreciate about her character is that she's obviously both a woman and both Black. And so, sometimes it can be her power, or character's powers can be pushed when they check off some of those boxes, but I don't feel like she's pushed. I think she's just awesome. Like, I love strong women. I love strong minorities, but of course, sometimes in stories it can feel forced, and I don't feel like it is forced with her. And so I really appreciate just a strong Black woman that I don't feel like I'm being preached to because of her awesomeness. And so, Spec Collector says Asgardian Wars got me to respect her. Great story by Claremont, back when gods were gods. I just noticed in one of the annuals, at least, I just got that book where did she pick up the hammer in it? I've got it ordered. I haven't gotten it to me. I'm looking forward to reading it. Spec Collector, if you know, was she able to pick up the hammer? No, couldn't pick up the hammer. Oh well, not many people can, but. She's probably pretty close. It's probably that thieving childhood that kept her from picking up the hammer. It's a hammer created by Loki, so maybe it had some different rules on it. Darth Lopez. She's battle tested for sure, for sure. And again, all feels natural, nothing forced. And so I really love her for that. And I think she's probably certainly, I'm trying to run through quick in my head, my favorite female X-Men. I said Wolverine's my favorite X-Men, or favorite character, period. I think she's probably my favorite Lady X-Men. She's awesome. All right. Number seventh most published character in Marvel Comics history is the Beast. So, is the Beast overrated or is the Beast underrated? What do you guys think? All right, Spec Collector says overrated, and Darth Lopez says underrated. So this answer has changed for me in the past, maybe, well, I guess it's been longer than I imagined, but 10 to 15 years. Spec Collector, how the heck is he, how the heck is he so smart? Yeah, that's a good question. So smart, we never see it. So I am going to go underrated. Hey, Niobe, good to see you. Glad that you're here. We're here just talking about the 100 most published Marvel characters and saying whether we think they are underrated or overrated. And Darth Lopez dropped the hint of what turned my mind when it came to the Beast. When the Dark Beast came into the picture, all of a sudden, I felt like it opened up doors, not just for the Dark Beast, but for the Beast himself, to see his potential really as a mad scientist. And I shared this on a recent video. In college, I majored both in biology and religious studies. And so I've always been fascinated by bioethics and the moral questions that brings up. And so the Beast, like pretty much no other these days, really explores a lot of those, especially in the Age of Krakoa. It was a huge part of the storyline with his cloning and making decisions that he felt that were best for the mutants, even though they were morally questionable. And I just love, I also love Mr. Sinister, for a similar reason. I just love how he brings out those characters. And I as a character, I hate, I thought Age of Krakoa, I was pulling against him. Yeah, he was against my boy Wolverine. But it's still, as just a reader, in terms of the story, I love his exploration of all these different characters. So, Niobe, underrated or overrated or just fat? You decide. That's right. And you got to pick one for all these characters. Spec Collector was supposed to be the muscle of the group. Yeah, 2 whole tons. That's one of the reasons I hated him for so long, Spec Collector, because he's supposed to be a strong guy, and he's just, compared to all the other strong men in different teams, just super weak. Just seemed like a great gymnast for the most part. And so forever, I thought he was probably the worst X-Men, the most lame X-Men. But when the Dark Beast came in the picture, all of a sudden, my eyes were opened, and I saw the potential in this character. And I'm glad that a lot of writers have explored that since then. And Darth Lopez, same thing. Yes, sir. That changed everything. In the Krakoa era, he was scary evil. No kidding. I was really uncomfortable with certainly some of the decisions he made. If you haven't read X-Force, the X-Force in the Age of Krakoa, if you enjoy bioethics, highly recommend. Loved those stories. I think, again, as an underrated, I'm sure I love that storyline more than most people. Spec Collector, never bothered to read the Dark Beast, and I don't think you have to get what I'm saying. But if you don't know, he was introduced in the Age of Apocalypse, and basically the current Beast is the Dark Beast, and it was the first time you saw the potential of the Beast, who didn't have a conscience really, and just explored a lot of mad science. And the current Beast keeps doing that more and more and more. And so Spec Collector, done with that animal. Won't give him another chance. I hear you. He was my least favorite X-Men for years. So totally get what you're saying. But for me, Beast is underrated. In anything that he's in now, I want to read just because I'm wondering what evil can this guy get into next. Thing, on the other hand, loved every mutation, and we're getting to the Thing. Darth Lopez, what he did to Wolverine was unforgivable. I agree, my man. I'm not saying I agree with the Beast, and I think you guys know this. I just love the Beast. He's interesting because he's so bad. Some of the things that he's done. All right, number 8, the most 8th published Marvel character of all time is Thor. Is Thor overrated or is Thor underrated? This is another one, real tough one for me to make a decision on. And I am, like I said, I'm reading these kind of along with you guys, trying to make a quick thought. And this is where I am. Yeah, fat. Thor is fat. That's maybe the best Thor. That's my favorite Thor, Niobe. Oh man, one of my favorite scenes in all of the MCU. And again, we're talking about comics, not the MCU when we're saying overrated or underrated. But one of my favorite scenes, and I can't get it exactly right, but where Thor has lost Mjolnir. And we're at an Endgame, and he's been using, I guess, Stormbreaker for a while. And he goes back in time, and he sees his mom. And I can't remember exactly what happens, but he basically has this moment of closing with his mom who died, and in his present. And that's where he gets his hammer back, and the hammer man, all the tears that I've shared. That I will weep at an MCU movie. That was among the top ones. So Fat Thor has a special place in my heart for that. Spec Collector says most powerful conventional characters in all comics, in my opinion. Yeah, great point. Darth Lopez, hello Niobe, that's my favorite Thor. And Darth Lopez, also another crier. I've got him. I'm like Wolverine. I'm a tough guy. But I do have a real emotional side to me as well. He cried in that scene, especially. I tell you, the things that really get me, because family is really important. I have a wife and lots of kids. Whenever there's like a parent-child moment that's like, really, really meaningful, it gets me. It gets me. And Fat Thor got me. Spec Collector, you're so powerful, he had to be dumbed down. Very true. Oh my goodness. What am I going to pick? All right, this is another one where, if you ask me tomorrow, I might change my mind. Scene with Mom is gut wrenching. Totally agree, but I sadly am going to say in the comics, overrated. And the movies, I like his movie character a lot more. But again, we're talking about the comics. The movie character is a little more has a little more comedic, obviously, element to it. Too much comedy in God and Thunder, in my opinion. But I love that character, who's kind of powerful and bumbling. He's a little more serious in the comics, of course. And so that he can just be a little too unrelatable to me in the comics. And part of that is his power level. Obviously he just, as Spec Collector said, just off the charts power. So now I'm going to convince myself the other way. Mjolnir is super cool. The sense of whether or not you can lift his hammer, super cool. I love everything Mjolnir, but I got to stick with my guns. I'm still going to go overrated by a little bit. Shauna Rain, thanks for being here. Still in the movies. Fat was funny. Checking in from Fremont, Nebraska, and underrated his lore crazy. And her favorite X-Men is Wolverine, Hulk. 180, if you know. That's right. His true first appearance, even though I love 181. I love, this is, I'm thinking of making a video at some point, like hot takes I have, or at least things that I think I'm in the minority of as a collector. I actually personally prefer to collect first cover appearances over first appearances, just because when I've read the story, usually I'm only going to look at the cover ever again. So I love 181 for that purpose, but 180 is the true first appearance Wolverine. He's clearly on that last page. Spec Collector guy was able to travel back in time, teleport anywhere in the universe. 180's first appearance. 180 is the book. I agree. So on Thor, I didn't know all that. You're going to try to change my mind. I didn't know about the traveling back in time part. So maybe he's a little more OP than I thought. But 180 first appearance, 181 the book. That's where I'm at. You know, yeah, and so I just love that cover on 181. If you've seen my channel, you know, think, the good Lord that I inherited a collection from my father-in-law that had both of those in it. So I treasure those. Darth Wright, ASM 299, first Venom. So yeah, great points. Just like Gad, yeah, 100% agree there. Spec Collector, Gambit Annual, yeah, whatever this is, 16, whatever number that is. 100% the first appearance. It's crazy that isn't considered the first appearance by anyone. This is not even debatable to me. But 266 is the book, and again, it's because of that cover. That cover is just so special. All right, so Thor number 8. Number 9. This is someone who's already been mentioned in an earlier comment. The 9th most published Marvel character is Thing. So is Thing overrated or is Thing underrated? What do you all think? Whew, man, these are some tough ones. Underrated, overrated, what is the Thing? So we have Spec Collector saying underrated. Darth Lopez saying underrated. Derek Neiman, good to see you, Derek. Saying properly rated. Derek, here's one of my criteria for me. Anybody here can put properly rated. I'm not going to allow myself to pick properly rated because I feel that about a lot of these characters. I have to pick overrated or underrated. I probably agree with a lot of you on, if you were to say this on a lot of people that we're going through, but I'm not going to allow myself to say this. Shauna says, my favorite Marvel characters are Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider, Peter Parker, Iron Man, Hulk, Punisher, Silver Surfer, Blade, Quasar underrated. A lot of great picks there. Spec Collector's so popular, even CM Punk took his phrase. Hey, that's a great point. When you have a WWE wrestler that uses your catchphrase, it's clobbering time. And the WWE, man, you've got to say this guy deserves a lot of respect. Darth Lopez, not a big FF guy. Derek says, okay, if we're playing by those rules, it's got to be under. Appreciate it, Derek, playing by my rules. And so I'm going to agree with everyone so far. The Thing is underrated. And I think there's a number of reasons, because, I don't think the Thing just gets much respect at all. When people think of great Marvel characters, I don't think the Thing even comes to mind for most people. And even though he's the 9th most published character in Marvel Comics, just nobody would put him at the top of the list. But he had obviously such a rough go. Like all of FF come back from their journey into space. They all look normal, all look beautiful. And he looks like, obviously, the Thing. I mean, how angry should he be at the world that he has to go around looking like that all the time? But he doesn't. He obviously he struggles with it, but he concludes at the end of the day that life is still good, that he still, as angry as he is at Stretch, especially in the moment, that he's going to love him. And what's also special about him, as I'm thinking about it now, he's the only one that is actually not part of the family. Obviously, Visible Woman and Johnny Storm, Human Torch, their brother, sister. Now, Mr. Fantastic married Sue, and so he's obviously, not blood related, but in the family. The Thing is not actually a part of the family, but he perhaps is the most important part of the family and cares about them just as much as anyone. I love now that he's married Alicia and they've adopted, the Skrull and Kree child. Like I've said, I always love family stories, and to so see him as a dad now is awesome. And just, one of the best examples in life, in comic life, of turning lemons into lemonade and going on and realizing, hey, even if bad things happen, I'm in control of how I go forward. All right. So Shauna said, she agrees Thing is underrated. Been put in World Contest of Champions. Yep. Great point. Spec Collector, thank you. Yeah, give me a thumbs up. Derek, yeah, Thing always gets the short straw. No kidding, man. I mean, what bad luck this guy has. Shauna also says Nick Fury is super underrated. Yeah, great picks for underrated. A lot of people underrated. All right, so the Thing. I think this is the first one where it's been a unanimous. I think we all said he's underrated. Man, that's pretty interesting. How I wonder if everybody just across comics agree with that. The Thing is underrated. All right, number 10, most published comic character of all time is Iceman. Shauna, good question. So what about the bad guys? We're eventually going to get to some. So what I'm going through is list I found the 100 most published characters. And so we're just going through order. We're certainly not going to get through them all tonight. I'm probably going to do this stream at some point. Again, continuing on the list. So of course, the good guys have just been published more. They have their own titles. There are a lot of bad guys that have their own titles. They're just guests in titles for the most part. So that's why we haven't quite gotten to some bad guys yet. I won't tell you who, but the first, at least, obviously a lot of bad guys can sometimes go back and forth. But the first person that's at least been a significant bad guy, at least at some point in his journey, is at number 23. So it's not until we get to 23 that we'll get some of the bad guys, but we will get there. And if people like this series, I might just do one once we're through this one, just the most published villains and do it all over again. So you have to tell me if you like this kind of thing. All right. So Darth says Iceman is overrated. Shauna understands. Yep. Spec Collector overrated. Had to be upgraded to stop being so lame. Darth Lopez, Iceman is just useless. All right. Appreciate the thoughts. This one, unfortunately, is pretty much just a nostalgia pick for me. Because of nostalgia, I'm going to say Iceman is underrated. So I grew up watching Spidey and his amazing friends. And so, Iceman was one of the three main characters on that. And because for years as a child, the only superheroes I really knew, a few had guest appearances on it, but it was Iceman, Spider-Man, and Firestar. And so that was my group for years. And so I am biased because of my childhood. Sean agrees, overrated. I'm just a biased guy here. Darth Lopez, how is he at Omega level? I don't know. You guys are probably right. But sometimes when love blinds you, I'm probably just blind here. But he's underrated to me because of Spidey. Hey, stop getting these physics and things that make sense. Spec Collector says never could understand how that bridge stayed up in the air. How many people did he kill when that bridge broke? Come on, suspend your disbelief for a little bit. But you're exactly right. That you're ruining all my thoughts and all my plans for Iceman to be considered underrated. But a lot of belief needs to be suspended. I do I think he's kind of like Storm, where there's a lot more room to explore his powers and be creative with them. Hopefully some writer. And I will say, I think he hasn't gotten a lot of attention the last few years, at least what I've read. He's been kind of lame recently, but he's just got a soft spot in my head. Iceman is the most expensive CGC 9.8 cover. So I don't know why it was in 88. So then again, I'm not sure which cover that's on, but if you know which cover that's on. Just X-Men 1. Oh, it's on the most expensive cover. Yes, he is part of that. Throwing it. That's back when he looked more like a snowman. He's got an upgrade on his appearance too. He looked pretty rough in those early X-Men days. All right, so I'm in the minority here. Iceman, I'm the only one that thinks he's underrated. All right. Now we're moving out of the top 10. Number 11, most published character of all time in Marvel Comics, Jean Grey, a.k.a. Marvel Spec Collector back when you could beat Iceman at the candle. Spec Collector, get off my case about Iceman. I'm just kidding. All right, number 11, Jean Grey, Marvel Girl. Overrated or underrated? What do you all think? Derek coming in with overrated. Give everybody else another second or two to chime in before I say what I think. Eddie from the Batcave, thanks for being here, Eddie. We're going through the top 100 most published characters, overrated or underrated. We've got Eddie says overrated. Darth says the first one chiming in with underrated. All right. Well, I am also going to go overrated. Spec Collector Jean Grey is useless. Wow, man, hot take there. So I also think she's overrated. She's just boring to me, other than the times where she hasn't really been Jean Grey. Like, yeah, the Phoenix, she's pretty interesting and exciting. But is that really Jean Grey? Yeah, to me, it's not. So if you're talking about just Jean, a little boring to me. And as much, I talked about earlier, about Captain America and marriage, all this kind of stuff. As much as I want people to stay faithful, I can get why Cyclops went after the White Queen. Yeah, I don't defend it. Bad, terrible Cyclops to do that, but at least I get it, because Jean Grey is boring. Yeah. Darth hot take with a Jean Grey is useless. Derek, all she does is nag poor Scott. I can't agree more, Derek. She's not someone. Spec Collector. Yeah, that's right. She is not the Phoenix. That's why I separate those two as well. So that character was interesting, but yeah, that's not Jean Grey. Shauna says she gets dyslexia when she's excited. Underrated to mean a lot of Marvel, which she makes the time go by, though low key. Yeah, to Marvel World, she makes the time go by. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, she is tough for me to take, just like Derek said. Just the nagging gets me. Eddie says they use her too much. I agree. Darth said when she's written good, she's a bad A. Yeah, I agree. That can be the case. Is she ever written as a bad A, though? I guess sometimes, maybe. Yeah. Spec Collector Phoenix is a cosmic entity. That's right. And Darth Lopez in the Krakoan era, her and Wolverine got it on. I missed that storyline. I missed that one. Or I forgot it. She's just a forgettable character, Darth. So maybe I read it, but she's always in the pickle jar. That's right, Sean. Always in the pickle jar. Always got a hand in everybody's business. So, all right. Well, Darth, I think you've been outvoted on this one, but I was outvoted on Iceman. So it's nice to have someone who can feel the pain of being on their own when they're on the moon. Katy Perry mixed up. I like that. You didn't mention much on that storyline. All right, good to know, Eddie. I won't go back. All right, number 12, most published Marvel character in all of history is the Hulk. So, is the Hulk overrated or is he underrated? What do you all think? Hulk, overrated or underrated? Darth goes with underrated. Any other votes? Spec Collector. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. All right, we might have some. Shauna says underrated. All right, got a couple of underrated here. Derek says underrated. Spec Collector overrated. All right. Well, man, this is where it's tough, because it kind of depends what area you're talking about. But I'm talking about the present. So here's my answer. Hulk, overrated. Eddie says tough, maybe underrated. I'm going to go overrated. And the reason I say that, for decades, I would have said he's underrated. But I feel in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years, the Mortal Hulk, he's just become too over powerful. He's become too. They've you talking about Iceman getting his powers upgraded. I felt the Hulk has done that as well, and just became this the whole kind of almost cosmic entity, which makes him obviously even more of a bad A. But so in some sense, I could see why people would think he's underrated there. Because if you're talking about just power level, totally underrated. I mean, he's the world breaker. And that's probably the last time, like, I really love that storyline. I still love, again, all these characters I love. I've got to pick. I don't want to pick it, on many of these. Most of these I just want to be like Derek and say properly rated. But I can't. That's not my rules. And so, I think he's just too powerful now in people's eyes. And, like in that Immortal Hulk run, one issue had him like he's basically like the next Galactus. As much as I love the Hulk, is he really the next Galactus? I just can't see it. Spec Collector, how can anger have no limit? Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, they've just gone too much. No limit on Derek. Exactly. There's so many Hulk personas. That's a great point too. I found out about 3 other ones I didn't know this week. And so and obviously a big part of the Hulk is kind of this exploration of the mind space and different personalities and all that kind of stuff. But still, it's just too much. I just want the Hulk and Bruce Banner, right? That's enough of the mind space fighting for me. I don't need any of these other Devil Hulk. I mean, Joe Fixit maybe kind of interesting, but not really. So Shooting Stuff says rated. Yep, he's rated one way or the other. With great power comes great responsibility. Shooting Stuff, giving me the wink there. Shauna says they did him dirty when he was standing as a slave, but super cool in the 80s and 90s when he's Professor Hulk. I liked. And team up with Wolverine. So undercover. Yeah. So good. So again, I love the Hulk. Absolutely love him. Big fan, except for the last few years. If I'd done this series 10 years ago, certainly would have said underrated, just not now. And Eddie agrees. Like, come, Hulk's like Galactus. Are you kidding me? Come on. No way. No way is the Hulk like Galactus. All right. Well, going to number 13, the 13th most published Marvel character of all time is, and for us, reveal Spec Collector, yes, love Professor Hulk. Future Imperfect is one of the best comic book stories ever written. I agree. Future Imperfect, awesome. I really can't wait till eventually we've got to have the Maestro on it, in the MCU at some point, right? Love the Maestro. But even in that world, Maestro wasn't Galactus. You know what I'm saying? Like, Maestro power level, I can get on board with, but not this Galactus stuff. All right, number 13, Colossus. Is Colossus overrated or is Colossus underrated? Give everybody just a moment to get in their answers. Is Colossus overrated or underrated? Shooting Stuff, the noob comic collector here, saying who. So big metal guy, Colossus. Darth Lopez chimes in with overrated. Spec Collector says overrated. Give a couple more seconds if anybody wants to get something in. Eddie says under. Spec Collector. Well, I think this is objectively true, right? His little sister is more powerful. All right. So for Colossus, Derek says under. Also, we got a little split here. A couple over, a couple under. I am going to go with he is overrated. I think Colossus is overrated. It pains me to say because I want to like Colossus. I think his aesthetic is awesome. I love the look of Colossus. So Eddie, I can get on board with this, Eddie. I don't think they use him properly. I agree, but I've got to vote. I'm voting this how they use him. I'll tell you in a minute how I think they should. Well, where I wish they would go more with him. So Colossus is just too naive, in my opinion. That's why I don't like him. He's just like He's just like this bumbling oaf. And in fact, the reason he was put on the quiet council during the Krakoan age is because he's just like easily manipulated. And he just isn't smart enough for me. And even though he's a good guy and all this stuff, he's just kind of like, emotionally unimpressive to me. That's true, Derek. I hate big muscles. I get jealous. I have, it's a measuring contest and can't deal with that on Colossus. He's got my girl, Kitty, and I can't stand it. Spec Collector says he has a cool costume though. Agree. Love the look of Colossus, but just not wise enough to me. Just too naive. Now, what I would love to see, Eddie's point about not writing him correctly, and I don't think this has been explored most in the comics. Obviously he's been in thousands of issues, so I haven't read all of it. But his Russian roots, I would love to see that come into play, especially, I grew up, as a kid during the Cold War. And so USA, Russia was such tension. That sense of rivalry has obviously been brought back in the last couple of years. Perhaps my favorite TV show of all time is The Americans. And so I just think there's so much potential to examine Colossus's identity as a Russian and what that means as part of a group of people who are primarily in the US, at least. I think there's just some cool espionage stuff that could come into play, and you could make some really interesting storylines with that. That's what I would love to see with the character, and he'd become a lot more interesting to me then. But until then, I can't do it. So Spec Collector says Deathstroke threw him off a cliff in X-Men versus Teen Titans, beat him in 2 seconds. Yeah. How powerful? I mean, I love Deathstroke. He's probably underrated in my opinion. But yeah, should you, if Colossus is that great, should it be that quick? Shauna Rain, overrated. Let me down to Secret Wars. That's why Spider-Man #8 show that I don't. Yeah, I agree. See, if you watch my channel, Shauna, Secret Wars is the first comics that I ever read when I was a kid. My mom bought me a 3-pack of comics at Walmart or Kmart. Had issue 7, 8, and 9. And he was just a fool in that. He felt there's some alien girl that's on I can't remember, like Zaz or some weird alien name, that he just neglected all of his duties because he had these had this puppy love for this alien girl. And like I said, my childhood cemented Iceman's view in my eyes. I think my childhood also cemented Colossus' view in my eyes. Just this kind of like, so somebody who I can't remember who did, somebody earlier called somebody a simp. I forget which character we were talking about at that time, but I feel Colossus is a simp, and so I can't get on board with him for that reason. Derek says Colossus origin story would be so sick. I would love a Colossus origin story, especially exploring that time in Russia. Love to see him explored as a Russian asset. Oh man, if they did some storyline where all of a sudden you realize for decades he's been a Russian asset, like the American. Oh my goodness, Colossus could vault to being one of my favorite characters of all time. But I don't know if it's going to happen. Ultimate Wolverine Colossus is pretty mean. Yeah, I haven't read a lot of the Ultimate storylines, so that would be interesting. I'll have to check that out. If that plays up, some of his stereotypical Russian thing, I would love that. Cyclops, that's where we brought in Spec Collector. Cyclops is a simp. Cyclops could be the leader of the simp movement, and I guess Colossus, in my opinion, would be his right hand man. If there's any character I feel like I have a storyline for, it's Colossus, and again, this Russian heritage that he has. All right, moving to number 14. The 14th most published character in all of Marvel history, we have Professor X. Is Professor X overrated or is he underrated? Give everybody a few seconds to get their answers in. Sean has all 12s in mint condition of Secret Wars. That's awesome. Yeah. And then you got the error. That's sweet. One of my, Secret Wars 8 was my, I had beat up copy as a kid because I read it through. Then I was so excited a couple of years ago. I got a raw copy and it came back at CGC 9.8. One of my favorite books in my collection. Love that cover. Love Spider-Man. Love the black suit. Everything about it. Secret Wars will always have a special place in my heart. So I'm glad, Shauna. I feel you've got all the feels working in me. All right. So Professor X Spec Collector says under. Eddie says over. Darth says overrated. Spec Collector underrated because he chooses to be. Now that's a good point. He nerfs himself a little bit. That's a great point. Shauna says overrated. Spec Collector's type of power he could rule the world. Shoots stuff says Colossus versus Juggernaut. I think he's just Googling comic book characters. Derek Knives. I like that. Derek, what's so special about being a school principal? Shooting stuff says ultimately he's underrated. All these are tough, right? You guys make some good points, but I'm going to go. And because Spec Collector, you say only because he chooses to be, but he does choose to be. And for that reason, he is overrated. Yeah, this is the problem too. When you look at Age of Krakoa, Professor X, he goes from like someone who just totally nerfs himself, could rule the world, to then just being completely morally questionable in the Age of Krakoa. And so I don't like either one of those Professor X's. There has to be somewhere in the middle. He does give obviously all those principal vibes, as Derek says, and oh man, until Age of Krakoa, like I get you want to nerf yourself some because you're just so tempted to use that power that he has to just dominate everything, but feels like there's sometimes he could intervene. If he lived, he had those powers in the days of Hitler. Could you make an exception and kind of stop that? I feel like he should stop a little bit more than he does. And he, just is generally uninteresting as that school principal type person as well. He doesn't even know the Taco Bell prices. He should at least make advantage of that. Like know where the best place to get your deal is. I've got to go overrated there. Hate to do it, but them's the rules. You got to pick something. All right, Professor X overrated. Number 15. Number 15 most published character in Marvel history. We have Angel, aka Archangel. So who? Overrated or underrated? What is Angel? While people are getting their votes in, Derek says Professor X too much of a Magneto apologist. Yeah, great point, Derek. I understand your besties and everything like that, but you got to see a little bit more of Magneto's bad side. All right, when it comes to Angel, Spec Collector says overrated. Eddie says underrated. Give everybody another second or two if they have a vote. And this is a tough one because obviously the Angel and Archangel are such different characters. On the one hand. So what are, Eddie says, I don't think they know how to write him. I think that's a great point. And that Darth says overrated. And Eddie, this is, again, I think you felt the same way about Colossus. This is where I feel about Angel as well. I think there's a way to write him that's very interesting, but they don't write him. So I just got to base it on what they've written. And so overrated. He's like Tony Stark in terms of he's got all this wealth, Worthington Industries, but he's just unimpressive. Like Stark's intelligent. And again, I haven't read every comic that Angel's been in, but he's just such a forgettable character. What has he done? Archangel's a little different. Archangel's a little bit more exciting. But Angel, which is who he's been for most of his time, just really forgettable. Doesn't do anything special. Not really smart. Like, I don't even know what is Angel's even personality? Who is he? I don't really know. There's a lot of things you could explore, like Eddie says, in writing. You could explore more of how wealth has influenced him. Like that could make him a very interesting character. Like Tony Stark, wealthy, smart. What if you explored more of Warren Worthington, just wealthy, but just a party boy? And I guess they've done that some, but not enough to make him interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of religious connotations with him being an angel. You could explore some of the connotations of that a little bit more. But so Derek says, over just because you can defeat him by clipping his wings. Yeah, right. I mean, compared to the X-Men, that he's with, you've got Iceman, who, of course, we all agreed, right? He's awesome. I was the only one who thinks that. But still, even compared to Iceman, the original fight, well, Beast isn't that impressive either, power-wise. But so many powerful characters around. Angel, he just got some wings. Not that big a deal. Spec Collector. Regular Angel's simply a flying human. That's right. I mean, there's so many characters can fly. Angel, that's all he can do, but he's easier to defeat. It's a lot easier just to shoot a hole in his wings. It's a bigger target. There's someone else that can fly. So nothing big deal. Spec Collector with a long wingspan. Yeah, exactly. To my point, with a long wingspan just makes him a bigger target, right? Not impressive at all. Shauna thinks he's underrated. Archangel. So great point. And this is where I do make a distinction. If we were talking specifically about Archangel, I might put him at a little bit underrated. But when I'm looking at the totality of that character's history, I've got to say overrated. But I do love Archangel. A lot more interesting than regular Angel. Spec Collector, we have a ton of angels today. They buy wingsuits. Yes, a lot. Eddie. Yep, that's true. So. So it's a tough character to pick on, since he obviously has had two very different aspects to who he is. All right. Well, I said I was going to keep this live to about an hour. It's been about that right now. And so we are going to do one more character, though, since I didn't give any warning before we sign off. But before I reveal who number 16 is, I've really enjoyed, obviously, all you guys contributing. Sounds like, this might be something interesting to continue to do with this list. Obviously, this is just a test run, my first live ever. Do you guys want me to continue going through this list, like do another live at some point, where explore more of this top 100? Derek says yes, that's fun. Probably nobody would say no, to my face, unless you're got no heart at all. Probably just keep it to yourself. But I appreciate the encouragement. Eddie's saying, agree, it's fun. All right, good. All right, I'm having a ton of fun. I'm glad people showed up. You always swear when you're doing a live. Again, it's the first time I've done one. So if nobody shows up, I would still have shared my opinions. But what really makes it fun is when we have lots of people sharing their opinions, and it gets in a little bit of banter and talk. And Shauna, talk comics all day. All right, well, I'm glad you like it too. How about make it underpowered or overpowered? That's a good. Yeah, I've got a few ideas of what to do. I hadn't thought about that one. That would be number one. If you missed number one was Spider-Man, and you can obviously go back and watch the live. So shoot me up on, you can hit me up on Instagram also, like any of these ideas, like Spec Collector just put out, underpowered or overpowered would be a good one. Any ideas of just these kind of fun debate topics to put out? This is my wheelhouse. I love this type of stuff. All right. So the last one of the day, at number 16, we have Nightcrawler. So is Nightcrawler overrated or is he underrated? Darth also says this was fun. All right, good. That's the stuff I like to hear. And obviously, it incentivizes people to do this if people think it's fun. All right, so we got Darth at underrated, Spec Collector at underrated. Give another couple seconds for people to chime in. Darth Lopez, men of God, always are. I agree. Eddie, he is cool under. Derek, villains would be fun too. And if you really want to make people piss people off, do storylines. That would be a good one. That's a good one. I like that. So lots of good things. Shooting stuff here, bass fishing, top rated. All right, I'll keep that in mind. Shooting stuff. I'll have to have you come in and host that one. All right, Nightcrawler. We're gonna. So I see some other comments describing Nightcrawler, but I'm gonna reveal mine. I agree, Nightcrawler underrated. I think everybody put that. And actually, a lot of the reason I think that I agree with Darth. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I studied religious studies in college. And so I've always been fascinated, obviously, by religion and its place in humanity's life and all that kind of stuff. And so Nightcrawler, perhaps more than anyone, he's obviously at least near the top, explores a lot of religious themes. So that really fascinates me. And of course, what's so fascinating about him in particular is that he obviously this is part of his story. He looks like a demon, but he's on the side of angels. And so it's really interesting to see kind of people's perceptions of him and all that kind of stuff. But I really appreciate his faithfulness to his religion, despite people from his, because he was cast. He says he looked like a little demon boy. The people from his faith, like ostracized him, right? Oh, you're a demon boy, get out of here. And so, despite people, from his own religion rejecting him, he still stayed true to his religion, and that, to me, brings up a lot of respect. One of the things I love when I've studied religions are people who go through a lot of persecution yet maintain their faith, and that's true of Nightcrawler. I can't remember, like, it's a freaking kid. It's a freaking kid that cast him out. I mean, how don't you think this guy's gonna just say, forget all this, religion stuff, I'm out of here? But no, he believes in God, and that God loves him, even if nobody else does. Everybody else thinks he's a freak. Nightcrawler doesn't think that, and so he's faithful. So let's see what other Spec Collector. Good point. Anyone who can teleport you to the top of a volcano and drop you off is dangerous. Yes, yeah. A lot of Nightcrawler has a lot more potential of his powers that I think could be explored as well. That I think, I've got a lot of ideas of how, if I were writing him, but totally agree, Spec Collector. He could do so much more than we think. Derek, character's underrated but powered. He's OP. Yeah, he's got super power. There's a lot of things that he could do, a lot of things that he has done, a lot more things that he could do. Sean has given some good suggestions of bad guys list, best series, best fight, best no power. Yeah, great suggestions there. Nightcrawler, pound for pound, is underrated. Can fight, go and show up when it's time to fight. Yeah, I'll also agree. Darth says, good night. Yeah, this was awesome. Way past his bedtime. Thanks for being here, Darth, if you're still on. I really appreciate it. You were the only one, that reached out to me before you saw this was going to happen. Said you would be here. So I really appreciate it. I knew I had at least one person that was going to watch. That means a lot to me. Derek, everybody saying goodbye to Darth. Definitely do villains. Maybe I'll switch. I was planning originally just to kind of go through this list till I finished it. But maybe I should do villains next, and then maybe a couple other lists. Have a part two of this particular thing sometime down the road. So could do a bunch of part ones, then come back to part twos of those. Good night, Spec Collector. Yes, good night to you. Thanks for being here. Also agree with villains. Nightcrawler on the 90s cartoons, super sweet. Yep, totally agree. Good fights with Spider-Man, Wolverine, lots of other characters. So that's going to bring an end to this stream. First one I've done. So really appreciate all of you being here, and I'm excited to do another one. This was a lot of fun for me. Can't wait for the next one. Hope you can't wait as well. Good night, everyone, and I'll hopefully see you at the next one.